Hi everyone, welcome to the session. Please join Mojalefa and Tsepo for this CIPC Intellectual Property for Creators session by the ECP2 Student Film Festival and Durban International Film Festival. Mojalefa, on to you.
Thank you, Besh. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mojalefa KHOZA. I am with CIPC, and my responsibility is to put together all outreach programs on intellectual property. I am not alone. I am with my colleague, Tsepo Bambo. Now, the topic of my discussion today is, if you can see my screen, it's intellectual property for creators. And by creators, I collectively refer to the filmmakers, I'm referring to the musicians, everybody else, the actors, the performers, everybody else who is involved in the creative space. Now, in an hour that's allocated to me, hopefully I'll be able to talk to the points that you see on your screen. One, who are we and what do we do as CIPC? The legislation that we administer as an establishment of government. And then I'm going to introduce to you the topic intellectual property, short for IP. And after that, we will go through the different examples of intellectual property, obviously, copyright being at the center of all this. And I am going to finally touch on the reasons why we think intellectual property is very important. And finally, we'll wrap it off with, why do you think you need to protect your intellectual property? Now, this is who we are. And CIPC is short for Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. Now, if you look at our name, there are two components there. One, it's companies, and two, it's intellectual property rights, which is a subject of my discussion today. Yes, we are an agency of the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition. We report directly to the Minister of the Department, Mr. Ibrahim Patel, and we came into establishment in May. And the reason why we came into being is because the Companies Act 71 of 2008 was amended. And as a result, it gave birth to an institution that you and I today know as Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. Now, what do? We register companies of all types. We register your private companies, your public companies, your personal liability companies. We register your cooperatives. We also register your non-profit companies, but we do not register closed corporations anymore. But in terms of the new mandate and the new legislation, we are only responsible to maintain all those closed corporations that are registered on our database. Number two, we register what we call intellectual property rights. Here I'm talking about your patents, I'm talking about your copyright, I'm talking about your trademarks, and finally your designs. Now, for us to achieve our mandate, we rely on these three pillars. Call them programs if you like. Number one, we want to ensure that all South Africans have access to our products and services. Number two, we do not want to be seen as a registration office of companies and intellectual property only, but we also would like to make a contribution in our country as far as innovation and creativity is concerned. And as a result of this, we've put together a number of measures to make sure that we make our contribution with regard to innovation and creativity. And finally, our mandate has been extended to include regulation. In other words, all those companies registered on our database, big or small, we regulate them. We make sure that they comply with all the legislations. Yes, this is just the structure of who we are. At the helm of everything, we've got our commissioner, And we've got two major divisions within CIPC. I have not included all these supporting divisions like your IT, like your HR, but I included the main components of CIPC. On the left-hand side, you can see there is corporate regulation. This is where we register your companies, your cooperatives, and maintain all the CCs. And on the right-hand side, this is where I am situated. We call this division innovation and creativity. That's where we register your patents, we register your designs, your trademark, as well as copyright. Now, these are the legislations that we administer as an establishment of government. One, we administer the Companies Act 71 of 2008. This is the legislation that we use to register companies and regulate them. And number two, as far as intellectual property is concerned, we administer a legislation called the Copyright Act. Now, this is the legislation that takes care of your literary, artistic, and creative works. And then related to the Copyright Act, we have what we call the Performance Protection Act. Now, this legislation does not protect any literary, artistic, or creative works, but it only protects performance because performance is also regarded as a right. Whether it's performance in music, whether it's performance in films, it is regarded as a separate right. As a result of that, this legislation is a standalone legislation that makes sure that the performances is protected. Then we've got the Patents Act. Now, this is the legislation that protects your innovation. This is the legislations that protects your inventions. And I'll show you what types of inventions I'm talking about in the coming slides. Then we've got the Designs Act. Many people still do not know that designs are regarded as a product of intellectual effort and are therefore protected by this piece of legislation. And then finally, we've got the Trademarks Act. This is the legislation that takes care of your brand names, your company names. It takes care of your logos. It takes care of your slogans. In other words, a trademark simply refers to, in layman terms, a protected, a protected name, whether it's a name of a brand, whether it's a name of a company, it simply means the name is protected. Now, let us go to the topic of the day, which is intellectual property. Now, if you look at the screen, there is an internationally acclaimed definition of intellectual property, and it simply refers to the creation of the mind. In other words, what intellectual property means is if you apply your mind and at the end of the day, you create something out of your mind that becomes your intellectual property. The only requirement is your creation should be new. In other words, it should be something that nobody has done before. However, in terms of literary and artistic works, what you create should not necessarily be new, but it should be original. In other words, it should not be a copy of somebody else's work. Now, if you look at the screen, there are four types of intellectual property that I will be taking you through. Obviously, with a particular emphasis on copyright, since you, as the film maker, this is the legislation that really affects your work. However, it does not necessarily mean that the other three types of intellectual property have no bearing on your work because you can explore and exploit the other legal instruments like patents, like trademarks, and like designs to protect your literary works. For example, if you are into the business of sculpturing, you can protect your sculpture uh, with copyright, or you can even protect your sculpture by applying or lodging a design and thereby protecting the design of your structure. You can also apply for a trademark by giving your sculpture a name and thereby protecting the name of your sculpture. Now, if you look at the screen below, it simply tells you that intellectual property starts with an idea. Once you have an idea, obviously, the most obvious step that you should do is now innovate or work on your idea. And obviously, to do that, you would need to think out of the box. And when that has been done, obviously, the end product will be called intellectual property. And that intellectual property will be there for you to exploit, will be there for you to exclude anybody else from using your intellectual property without your permission. Now, this is just a continuation of the previous slide. These are the four types of intellectual property that I have referred to in the previous slide. If you look at the top left-hand side, I have used a cell phone to illustrate what a patent is. And if you look at the cell phone and you ask yourself a question, what should be the patent or what could be the patent of the cell phone? The answer is simply that the technology that is inside the cell phone that allows you and I to communicate wherever and wherever is what we protect as a patent. And if you look at the cell phone again, are there any other types of intellectual property in a cell phone? The answer is a simple yes. If you look at the cell phone, there is a design there. If you look at all the designs of the cell phones, they look similar, but they are not necessarily the same. Now, all those designs are protected in our country and anywhere else in the world by these mobile communication companies. And if you look at the cell phone again, is there a trademark? The answer is yes. Nokia is a trademark, which simply means it's a protected name. Highway is a trademark. iPhone is a trademark. In other words, all these mobile devices that we use have got names, and those names are protected by way of application for a trademark. And if you look at the cell phone again, is there copyright in the cell phone? The answer is yes. The copyright in the cell phone, if you may ask, what is the copyright in the cell phone? The answer is simply the copyright in the cell phone, it's the manual of instruction that comes together with the cell phone, because a manual of instruction is regarded as literary works, and any literary works is protected by copyright. Now, if you look at this screen, you can obviously agree with me that all those people who invented this or came up with these brilliant ideas deserve some form of protection. And the only way to get this kind of protection is to apply for it. And if you meet the requirements, the IP office, in this case, CIPC, will gladly grant you protection for your kind of application. If you look at the screen again, I've used one example of copyright, and which is book. There are many other examples of copyright, films included, stage acts included, novels included. And if you look at trademarks, on the bottom right hand side of my screen, I have used a few of the world's best known trademarks. What does it mean? It simply means that these names that you see on the screen are protected. So if you have a product or you have something in mind, you have to give it a new name, and you cannot use any of these names here, because if you do, these companies will take you on legally. Okay. Now let us talk about these four types of intellectual property in a little bit more detail, starting with a trademark. What is a trademark, and why is a trademark so important? What is in a name? Now, a trademark is simply a brand name, it's a slogan, it's a logo, and then in most cases, it's a company name. And the purpose of a trademark really is to say, this is who I am to the customers. It is to say, this is who I am, and this is the kind of service that I can offer you, and this is how I am better from my competitors. In other words, a trademark helps you to identify your goods and services from the goods and services of your competitors. Let me use the examples of the retail bank sector in South Africa just to illustrate what is a trademark and how important a trademark is. Now, if we look at into the retail banking space in South Africa, we've got your five major retail banks. We've got your ABSA, your Nedbank, your First National Bank, Standard Bank, um, and now of late the newcomer Capitec. Now, question: what do these five companies have in common? One, they are competitors. They are competing for your attention and my attention. Number two, they offer the same kind of services, which is financial services. In other words, they take care of our money. But how do we differentiate between these competitors? We differentiate between these competitors by using trademarks. Obviously, if you see the color blue, you immediately think of, you immediately think of, you immediately think of, of standard, of standard bank. Yes, a trademark is there just to help you build your own brand and to protect that brand so that nobody can take advantage or leverage on your brand for financial gains. In other words, it gives you an exclusive right, just like all these other three types of intellectual property, to exclude others from gaining from your trademark. Now, in our country, when you want to obtain protection for trademark, all you have to do is simply get in touch with the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission and apply for your trademark online. But the most important thing that I want to draw your attention to is, before you do that, do what we call a trademark search to find out if the name of the brand or the name of your company that you want to protect has not been taken and protected already. So it is very imperative that you conduct a trademark search to find out if you are eligible to apply for trademark protection. Right. And how much will it cost you to register a trademark? In order for you to register a trademark, I think the first thing that you need to do is to do the trademark search, just like I have indicated. And when that is done, and nobody has already applied for the trademark that you have in mind, then you can do the registration process. All you have to do is to visit our website and register as a customer. The system will create for you a customer code, and you create your own password, and you go to online transacting, and you go to IP services, and you register your trademark. A trademark is actually protected in South Africa forever. However, you need to renew your trademark after the first 10 years of registration. And all you have to do is pay your renewal fee, and then your trademark will always be active. Otherwise, if you do not renew your trademark, it goes into the public domain and it's up for grabs. Anybody can grab it and run with it, and you might not even have a legal leg to stand on. You might not even have a legal leg to stand on. Now, let us go to the second type of intellectual property, namely a patent. A patent, just like a trademark, gives you an exclusive right. an exclusive right. If you are an inventor, if you are an innovator, and you come up, you apply for a patent, you get a monopoly or an exclusive right. Now, that exclusive right will protect your invention, and your invention might be a product or your invention might be a process. Let me give you an example of a process. In our country, we've got a crisis, and our crisis is uh, electricity supply, which leads to load shedding. Now, one of the reasons, apart from corruption and lack of maintenance of our electricity resources, one of the reasons tabled about our electricity problem is that the production method is outdated, old, and very expensive. Now, people being people and companies being companies, I am quite sure that somewhere there are companies or there are people who are trying to come up with a new process of producing electricity quicker and cheaper. And once that has been done, that process can be protected by way of a patent. A patent, just like a trademark, offers the owner or the inventor or the innovator, if you like, the exclusive right to prevent others from using that invention without their permission and obviously without remuneration. Now, who grants a patent? CIPC is the only IP office in the country, and it is the one that is responsible for granting you a patent. So you can make an application with us, and if you meet the requirements, then CIPC will grant you a patent, which will grant you protection for a period of 20 years. After 20 years, it goes into public domain. Anybody can make an improvement to your invention, or anybody can copy your invention, and they will not be infringing on your patent because your protection would have lost. Now, if you look at the final point in this slide, I want to draw your attention to the word territorial. In fact, the protection of all intellectual property, patents included, is very territorial in nature. In other words, intellectual property rights are very territorial in nature. But what does that mean? What it means is that when you have applied for a patent in South Africa and it's granted, your protection is in South Africa only. It therefore means that if you want protection beyond the borders of South Africa, like Botswana, Nigeria, the US, and Canada, you'll have to apply for a patent in those jurisdictions. Obviously, you'll be subject to their national laws and their fee structure. Now, how do you register a patent? Like I said, we have made the application of all these four types of intellectual property easy. We are now an online web-based registration system. Now, what you can do is we will visit our website on www.cipc.co.za, and the first thing that you need to do is to do a patent search, just like a trademark search. And the reason why you need to do a patent search, it ensures novelty. It ensures that nobody has applied for the type of patent that you want to apply for. So a patent search will save you time and it will save you money. When you do a patent search and you realize that in South Africa nobody has applied for a patent similar to what you have, then it makes your life more easy. You can continue and doing, you can continue and doing lodging a patent. First, you can do an application for a provisional patent for only $60. And the beauty about this application process is you can do it on your own. You don't need an attorney. Now, a provisional patent application system buys you time. It gives you a period of about 12 to 18 months in which you can make amendments, in which you can come up with protocols, in which you can make any changes of your choice. But after that, after a period of 12 months, in terms of the Patents Act, you are required now to file a complete patent application. Yes, you are required to file a complete patent application. But in this case, the law, the Patents Act requires that you employ the services of a patent attorney, because a patent attorney is equipped and able to put together technical specifications on your and your on your behalf on your behalf. So that is in a nutshell how you can go about if you want to apply for a patent. Now let us talk about the design. A design is simply nothing else but the shape, the pattern, the form, the ornamentation or configuration of a product or an article. If you look at the screen, we have used an example of the design of a ring, which is jewelry. And usually, if you look at a ring, it is there for one purpose. It is there for you to look beautiful. It's an accessory. In other words, when you make an application to protect a design of earrings, you will be making that application to protect the shape or the look of those earrings. Now, if you look at the screen, there are two types of designs that you can apply for protection for with CIPC. One is the aesthetic design, and then number two, it's a functional design. Aesthetic design is there purely for the look, and the protection will last for 15 years, provided that the design is new and it's not a copy of somebody else's design. Okay. Now, if you look at a functional design is there for a purpose, and the design might be what it is because of the function that it performs. For example, if you look at the bottom of my screen, you look at the screwdriver, you can easily tell that the screwdriver is designed the way it is because of the particular function that it performs. Now, in other words, if you have a design, check whether the design is there for the look or for the function or both. And nothing stops you from coming to CIPC and apply for a protection of your design for the look or for the function or even both. As long as it meets the requirements and it's new, the office will gladly grant you the protection that you are applying for. Okay. Now, just like a patent and a trademark, if you want to apply for a design, all you have to do is visit our website. The forms that you see there are there on the are there on the website. For us to grant you protection for a design, aesthetic design, it must just be new and original. In other words, here we will be looking at the shape and the look. And from the third year of registration, you are required to renew the existence of your design on a yearly basis. And with a functional, the same apply with a functional design. Now, let us talk about the last type of intellectual property, that is copyright, and this is where your interest is as a creator, as a musician, as a film producer, as a performer, as a painter. All these literary and artistic works are protected by copyright. However, copyright, unlike the first three types of intellectual property that I've spoken to you about, copyright tends to be a little bit complicated. It tends to be a little bit tricky. That is why when it comes to the copyright space, there is so much fighting, especially if the copyright in question starts going into circles and start generating income. Always, The trouble is about who is getting what and who owns what. And the reason for this is because in one copyright work, we call them works, in one copyright work, whether it's music, whether it's film, whether it's stage direction or drama, whether it's books, you usually get not only one, but a bundle of exclusive legal rights. That is why it's a little bit confusing. Let me give you an example, and I'm going to use a film just to illustrate what I mean by a bundle of exclusive legal rights. Now, if you look at a film, there are different type of rights embedded in a film, and those different types of rights might be owned by one person, might be owned by two people, or might be owned by three or four people. For example, in a movie, let us start with the actors. The people who act in the movie are regarded as actors in terms of the copyright law, and they own the performance. They own the performance in a movie in terms of the in terms of the in terms of the in terms of the law. Now, if you look at that, there is already one type of right that is owned by somebody, and that right is performance. Now, in a movie again, you find a soundtrack. A soundtrack is music. Now, question: who owns the music in a movie? Obviously, the music was one created by somebody else. Let us look at music, for example. Somebody has written the lyrics for the song that is a soundtrack in a movie, and that person is the copyright owner of the lyrics. So we've got the second type of right owned by somebody else. Then the value chain goes on and on. Then we've got somebody who has composed the music, in other words, the melody and the beat, and that person is the copyright owner of the melody or the beats. Already we've got three different types of rights owned by different types of people. And it goes on. In the music, there is also performance, and that performance might be owned by the lead singer, and that performance might also be owned by the backing vocalist or the guy who plays a guitar or the band. And then the value chain goes on. There is now the film producer who take the performance, who takes the music, the soundtrack, and include them into the whole work called film production. Already you can see that there are different type of rights, a bundle of rights owned by different type of people. That is the reason why when the movie goes into circulation, all those people who owns rights in that movie are entitled to some form of financial rewards. That is why, if you are aware, we are now in the process of amending our Copyright Act. And one of the inclusion in the Copyright Act is the fact that we are advocating that actors should also get royalties, just like the performers in music, just like the performers in music. Now, if we are successful and the Copyright Amendment Act is signed into law, it means henceforth all the actors in any movie will be entitled to royalties once the movie is in once the movie is in circulation. Once the movie is in circulation. Now, what does copyright protect and what does copyright not protect? Now, what you see on the screen are all the type of works that are protected by copyright. Number one, we've got literary works. Literary simply means anything that is written down. And the examples of literary works are books, novels, scripts, textbooks, speeches, and even presentation. This presentation that I have put together, it's one example of literary rights. And this presentation, even though it was put together by me, it does not belong to me in terms of the Copyright Act. It belongs to CIPC because CIPC pays me at the end of each and every month to put together presentations of this nature. Number two, copyright protects musical works. Musical works, it's nothing else but the melody, the beats, or the music, if you like. Whether it's an R&B melody, whether it's amapiano melody, whether it's a hip hop melody, those beats are protected by copyright. And then it protects artistic works. Here we're talking about paintings, drawings, photographs, sculpture. And strange enough, in our country, unlike in other jurisdictions like America, architectural drawings in South Africa are protected by copyright. Yes, they are protected by copyright. What is the rationale? I really do not know. But those who craft our legislation, our mother department, should know the reason why they have decided to protect it under copyright. Then we've got cinematography films. This is nothing else but audio visuals. Anything that is audiovisual, whether it's a music video, whether it's a documentary, whether it's a television show, whether it's a fully fleshed movie, it's protected by copyright also. And then we've got sound recording. Sound recording, it's nothing else but the disc. And a USB can also be regarded as, as a sound recording because you can record music there. Then it also protects broadcast. By broadcasting, we're talking about nothing else but sounds and images. Here we're talking radio and television. And it also protects programs carrying signals, published editions. And another surprise here is in our country, unlike in America where they protect computer programs, uh, um, as patents, and they even have a separate legislation for protecting computer programs. But in our country, they protect them as copyright, and the rationale. When I inquire, I'm told that it's because computer programs are written down using soft codes, and cell phone applications also would fall into this category. You all know about Mr. Makate versus Vodacom, about the please call me story. If Mr. Makate would have approached CIPC, obviously these would have been protected as copyright. Okay. Now, let us talk a little bit about the registration of copyright. Now, I've said in the beginning that copyright tends to be very different from the first three types of intellectual property that I've spoken about, namely patents, designs, and trademark. When it comes to copyright, the law grants you automatic protection. When you write a piece of music, when you write lyrics, when you paint a photograph or a painting, when you take a photograph, the Copyright Act of South Africa grants you automatic protection. What does it mean? It means you're not required to come to CIPC and apply for protection because protection has been granted to you automatically. However, there is one exception. The only type of copyright that CIPC register is films. And that does not mean that films do not enjoy automatic protection. However, there is a reason why we are saying as aspiring filmmakers, come to CIPC and apply for the protection of your film. And in the coming slides, I'll show you the benefits of applying for film protection. Okay, and for you to enjoy that automatic protection for your literary, artistic, and creative work, unlike a patent where the requirement is novelty, with copyright, the requirement is that your work must be original, meaning it must not be a copy of somebody else's work, and it must also be reduced to material form. In other words, it must be something that we can see with our naked eye. It must be something you can see with our naked eyes. And for you to obtain that automatic copyright protection, one, you need to be a South African citizen, or your work must first have been published in this country, or number three, you should be a citizen of a country who is a member of the Berne Convention. And by the way, South Africa is a member of the Berne, is the member of the Berne Convention. However, we have come to realize that not registering copyright in South Africa creates a number of problems, especially when it comes to infringement. Because when your copyright has been infringed, 9 out of 10 times, the owners of the copyright fail to provide sufficient proof of evidence. As a result of this, we have decided at CIPC to put together a registration or a depository system where all copyrighted works can be deposited and a certificate and a number can be issued to prove ownership. In America, they do it. In 2019, we paid them a visit. We paid the Copyright Office of America, the US, which is in Washington, to actually see how they go about in protecting all these different types of copyright. And we've brought that information back to our country, and there are people working on it. Sooner or later, we will be announcing a depository system for copyrighted works that would make your life a little bit more simple. And we also visited Kenya because they also do it, to find out how they actually do it. Okay. Now, I said the only type of copyright that we register for now at CIPC is films. Now, people are asking a question. Why should I register a film when the Copyright Act has granted me automatic protection for my film? And this is the reason why we are encouraging you as filmmakers to come to CIPC and register for the protection of your film. Okay? And one important reason that stand out is registration is purely to facilitate proof. In other words, the registration certificate will help you when there is an infringement. And when there is a dispute, the information contained when you register a film will help to solve the dispute. For example, sometimes question arises about who owns the script for a particular movie, who owns the performance, who owns the soundtrack. When you apply for protection with CIPC for a film, that's the kind of information that you give us. And that information will come in handy in the future when there are disputes about issues of ownership. So that's one important reason that we want you to take note of and come and protect your feelings with us. Okay. Like I said, the information that you provide in that application will make it easier for you, the copyright owner, to bring infringement proceedings against pirates. In other words, it would be easy for you to prove infringement and copyright ownership in a court of law by just producing the registration certificate, because that registration certificate grants you the owner prima facie evidence that you can use in a court of law to prove infringement and also prove ownership. Yes, there you have it. Um, like all the other three types of intellectual property, all you have to do when you want to register a film is to visit us on www.cipc.co.za, and you follow these steps that are here. Number one, if you are new and have not interacted with us, the first step that you need to do is to register as a customer. When you do that, the system will create a customer code and you will create your own password. When that has been done, you will move to step 4, where you will deposit the funds before you register. In other words, you'll pay the application fee of 510, and on our webpage you will find our account details. The most important thing that you need not forget here is when you deposit the funds, you must use your customer code as a reference. Otherwise, if you forget that, then we will find it difficult to allocate the fees. When that is done, you'd go to step number 5. You click on online transacting. It will open up and you click on IP services. And then the final step is the forms for registering a film will pop out and you will provide us with the information.
Oh, Ash, what a fruitful, what a meaningful, what a much needed session that we just had now. I also would like to apologize for Mr. Molefe. He's having a bit of a problem with connection. I just hope that a lot of us have learned a lot from this. I have definitely learned a lot from this, and I'm so glad that slowly CICP is trying to involve the creatives in the film industry, because a lot of people are writing their own stories, their authentic, original stories. And we know how the industry is. There's always those vultures, few vultures who are just ready to take whatever they people work, and some so and so has taken my work. So now at least now we know where to go and how to protect, our original ideas. Thank you so much for listening in. It's been such a great session. It's been such a great session. We haven't found Ubaba. We haven't gotten him back, but I think we have covered most of the things. So there's also a link. There's a link also that's on this live that you can go to and see how you can apply or to register your film under CIPC and protect it. So thank you so much. All right, it looks like Ubab KHOZA is trying to reconnect. So let's just give him a few seconds. Let's give him like 4 minutes to try and reconnect. But yeah, this is a very interesting conversation, and I'd really like to thank ISPETU and the Durban International Film Festival for actually having such a conversation with all the creatives of South Africa, because a lot of us are trying to venture into the business side of the industries, which is something that is kind of new to us, especially as Black people, if I may say so. So it's very important that we know these things so that we don't go in blindsided, and so I really, really appreciate this conversation. Let's just check if Bob KHOZA, if he's so yeah. If you also go into this live, you will find a lot of links for most of the things that we conversated about today. The CICP website, just go into the link, check it out. So I personally am a very huge believer in the CIPC. I'm a huge believer in the CIPC. I've got a lot of things registered there of my own, and let me tell you something, they will check on you, they will send you emails, they'll make sure everything is up to date, they will remind you if you need to do your returns. So it's quite an incredible service. They've got such a great service there. So don't be afraid to go in there and see what you need, and I say to you, you will get all the assistance you need. And it's quite easy to use. All right. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. I would like to specifically thank Babu Mojalefa Kuzwayo for having this session with us. We really, really appreciate it. We hope to see you again next year. All right. Don't forget, guys, the festival is still on. Let's go watch if I see there's no questions, so let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for tuning in. And this is goodbye from me.